I love the smell of RC212 in the morning. I'm Alan Baker, the Cellar Rat, and welcome to the Pinot 2.0 video podcast. We're at day 8 in the winery, and fermentation is just kicking off, and we have lost 4.3 bricks on one bin and 6.7 bricks on another bin that has just started fermentation about a day and a half ago. And the bin that's going a little bit slower is the native bin. And we're not talking native as in Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. We're talking just the yeast that were on the grape. So today we're moving the bins out of the warm room where they started their fermentation. It's about 85 degrees in there. And we're moving them here into this beautifully whitewashed room, which does, I think, wonders for my complexion. The big thing that we're worried about or concerned about or trying to do right now, we're not really concerned because it's going to be easy to do, is to make sure that the grapes, the must, hits that proper peak temperature. I had a conversation with winemaker Kevin Hamill about that, so I thought I'd play a little bit of that here and we'll come right back and I'll show you how we're going to get our Pinot Noir, the Pinot 2.0, up to the proper temp.
With Pinot Noir, this is, I think, especially important. It tends to want to get very hot and ferment very quickly. So there's generally what's called a lag phase where the fermentation is just starting and it's going fairly slowly. And what's happening is the yeast are building, they're multiplying and they're focusing on producing more cells rather than fermenting sugar. And once you've got a big enough population, then they start to actually consume sugar. And with Pinot Noir, you can lose, say, 10 or 15 degrees Brix in one day, and that's 10 or 15% sugar can be consumed in one day, and that's a lot. So watching the temperature during that part of the fermentation is important. If you let it get too hot, it'll go really fast and maybe even get so hot that it stops altogether. And that you don't want.
Just tell me kind of what is involved in a warm versus a cool fermentation, what temperature does to the resulting wine.
Some of the most desirable components of Pinot Noir and wine in general are what are called esters, and they're fairly delicate compounds that are a combination of alcohol and natural acids, and they're what give fragrance to a wine. A lot of fruit aromas are esters, and they are sensitive to temperature. So if you have an overly hot fermentation, you can lose those. A fermentation that's too cold, you may not extract the amount of tannin that you want. You may have a wine that's very fruity but seems a little simple and lacks sort of mouthfeel.
So in kind of a grand generalization, which I'm happy to be the one to do, cool fermentation preserves or enhances fruit, and the hotter it gets, the more kind of structure and tannin you're going to pull out of the grape.
That's
okay.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. And as far as Pinot goes, and I know it will vary by vineyard and batch, what's kind of an optimum? I know the temperature will vary throughout the fermentation, but what's kind of as hot as you like to see your fermentations get?
I don't like to see it get over 90.
Yeah.
That seems plenty warm enough to get all the tannin and color out that you want, but not so hot that you're burning things off.
And what's kind of on the low end?
I'd say, below 80 degrees is you're going to have you'll have characteristics that might be attractive in a very young, fresh wine, but won't necessarily give you qualities that you would age. If you do a short cold soak and then you have a hot, quick fermentation, I think you tend to get more of the earthy autumnal flavors, and if you have a longer cold soak and a modest heat spike during the fermentation, I think it'll be more berry focused, and so it can have an effect in that way.
Okay, that was Kevin Hamill. Kevin makes wines under his own brand, Hamill Wines, and he's a consultant for several wineries in Northern California. I'm here with Mike Z, and the short question is, why do they say Mike Z? Do you have a last name?
It's Zitzleff, yeah. But
Zitzleff. See, I can say Zitzleff. Why can't anybody else?
It's too hard.
Okay, so we're out of the warm room, and our grapes are now sitting at about 70-something, 73 degrees or so. We've just heard Kevin Hamill talk about how we want to hit somewhere around 90. What's the strategy for making that happen here?
Well, the easiest way to do it, once you've got a batch of multiple stainless steel tanks, is just turn the thermostat control on and set the temperature. We don't have that in this scenario, and for us, we use stainless steel heat plates that are connected to a hot water system, and that over a few hours will bring it up to that 89, 90, 92 sort of degree mark. So, and it's pretty important we reach that, because for us, that's really where we get most of the free volatile flavours, alcohols, tannins. Without that, you make a pretty fruit-forward style of wine that's pretty boring. So.
Okay, so the plates that we stick in here, how long do we keep them in? Do they take that all the way up to 90 degrees, or do you just get it ripping and let the fermentation take over? What's the strategy?
Our brine is basically set at 90 degrees, and it'll basically take it up to that probably in about 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
We don't want to take it too quickly because you don't want to stress the yeast. Nice and gentle is the easiest way to do it. Then once we've reached that 90 degrees, the water sits there and holds it at that temperature. So sometimes if we get a cold snap and the room starts to chill down, we keep the heaters in so that we keep it at that constant temperature. Otherwise, we take them out and let the yeast do its stuff.
Okay, so how long should it sit near 90 degrees for the fermentation's sake? You've got a lot of experience just kind of working your way through this. How long should it stay there if we're looking for the perfect kind of ideal fermentation?
Yeah, it's a trade-off between time and temperature. Higher the temperature, quicker the ferment. Quicker the ferment, less time that the wine is in contact with the skin. So we need to try and extend that as much as possible, but we also don't want to ferment it too cold that it just doesn't pull out those tannins and colour compounds. So I would say we'd be at 30 to 32 degrees Celsius, and being an Australian, we work with Celsius. So we get up to that 90, 92 mark Fahrenheit. We'd probably look to be staying there for about 2 to 3 days, and then it'll slowly start tailing down to about that 78, 75 degree mark over the next 3 or 4 days.
Okay, so every time I dig in here, I can see the bubbles come through, and it's really a beautiful red color. So let's time you and see how quick you can get one of these plates in here. I want to show people what these things look like, because it's kind of funky.
We've only done 600 of them. So.
Beep. So that just has hot water circulating through it. It's not
simple. Very simple.
Well, this looks almost too easy. It's like
It's Meccano set.
it's like I could do this without a college education, maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do. What's a college education? And that's it. Connect it on, we turn the machine on, and we'll get 90 degree water pumping through the system. Give it about 5-6 hours, and it should be up to temperature. So.
Okay, great. Well, this is going to take off here, and I'm Alan Baker, the Cellar Rat. We'll be back soon to see how this is going, and you're watching the Pinot 2.0 video podcasts.